I'm very glad to be here. I'm very thankful for the organization, for inviting us, WIKIRI, to be here. And I'm very glad to see so many people involved with frogs and be fascinated by frogs and getting involved with its conservation. So I'm very excited to see that. I don't get to see that often, like people outside biology or people outside, like it's very nice to see that. So I will start. This is WIKIRI. It started as a very, very small place with a few biologists and one economist. So we just had this species. This was the very first species. It was very difficult in Ecuador because you couldn't export any CITES people didn't know what frog trade was or anything, so it was very difficult at the beginning. And it all started not as a regular pet, like pet commerce, pet trade. It started because of a necessity of some biologists, of some herpetologists. First of all, it started because we needed to somehow fight illegal trade. We were talking with Ivan, right? And that's a very big issue. And I think legal commerce, legal trade is fighting. It's a direct way of fighting it because controls in our countries is very weak. So we need like a real way to fight it. And the other reason is because we need funding for our research and our conservation. We always depend on projects. We always depend on extra funding, so we needed some effort, some like regular funding to keep on our research and conservation. And that's how it began, and that's how it started growing. So now it has, I know all of you know that it has more than one species. It has many species. These are some of the examples. And yeah, now it's like 24 species, I think, 19 in the market, and some more that are coming for the next year. But actually, I didn't come to talk about WIKIRI because I think you all know WIKIRI because it sells frogs, and that's how it is known. But there's a lot more behind WIKIRI. So I came to tell what's behind the scenes of WIKIRI, what we are doing with the profiting of WIKIRI. So attached to WIKIRI, we have the Centro Jambatu. Actually, I work for the Centro Jambatu, not for WIKIRI, but we are sisters organizations, well, sisters institutions. So we work very close together because WIKIRI is funding many things of what Centro Jambatu is doing. And I will introduce you to Centro Jambatu and all the activities, the research and conservation that we are doing there. But first of all, just before going to Centro Jambatu, WIKIRI, more than selling, just selling frogs, is sustainable bio trade. It's pioneer in lab production of Ecuadorian amphibians. This is very new in Ecuador, and we are pioneering that. We also work with social and environmental responsibility. So we want to guarantee conservation. Our main focus, our main goal is to do conservation. So we work with environmental responsibility. We fight illegal wildlife trade. This was a big news in Colombia. They got this huge amount of frogs, illegal frogs that were crossing, that were going to be exported. So we, as I said, try to fight somehow with that because our ministry is not giving us permits for doing research, but they are not making any control on illegal trade. And also WIKIRI is supporting research, conservation, and education. So that's why I'm going to focus now on that part of WIKIRI and that part. that it's Centro Jambatu work. So I put that picture there. I don't know how many of you recognize that picture. It's the Hambatu. And the name of the center comes from that because it represents the center in many ways. This frog here was, it's called Hambatu, but actually the name Hambatu, Hambatok, and many other names comes from a native language, from Vitro and other languages. And it means cries in the rain, something like that. Llora en la lluvia, cries in the rain. And it is called Hambatu, but actually all the toads are called Hambatu in these languages. But the thing is that this species here was so abundant. Before it was so abundant, but there were so many individuals that you have to be careful not to step on them in some areas. And that's why people just recognize like all the toads at Hambatus, and this was one of them, like the most recognized because it was very popular. So just then, after that, when it disappeared, people start thinking, okay, the Hambatu has disappeared. Like all the frogs almost has disappeared. And like 3 years ago, we found a very small population, which gave us hope. So this is what this represents very good Hambatu, because we are working, we are trying to prevent extinction of many species, and the refounding of these species give us hope, because for many species the hope is very low. The probability of survival in nature is very low. So founding these species give us hope and give us like all promote us to keep on working on what we do. So why is it so important for us? I'm sure you've heard a lot about that, but I will just give a very quick reminder of what's happening in Ecuador, and I'm sure this is the situation for, I'm not sure, but this is the situation of many other countries of South America. So this is number of species. Brazil is the number 1, then Colombia with number of species, and we are in number 4th. But if we just take into account the species per area, then Ecuador has like the largest species per area. And this comes with a lot of responsibility, but not all the people understand, not all the public institutions and Ministry of Environment, and all the institutions that are supposed to take care of the diversity in Ecuador is doing such a thing, and they do not understand what this biodiversity represents and the endangered and the level of risk that these species are in. So for you to make an idea, this is Ecuador, and this is the Andean region. And many people, this is the Amazonia, and this is the coast. So many people think that the Amazonia is the most diverse place, the area with a lot of with the most richness in it. But actually, the most diverse and most richness is in the Andes. And why I am saying that, and it's because if you look at this map, all the yellow is the agricultural land, and only the green is our native ecosystems, our remaining habitats for frogs. So frogs are very endangered because of loss of habitat. And this is a map of deforestation in Ecuador, so from the period 2016 to 2008. So the deforestation rate is very high. Actually, is the highest in the region. So we are facing big problems, and this means big problems for frogs. And this is a new threat that we are facing, and it's large-scale mining. We didn't have it. Actually, this year is starting the first exploitation or the first mine, the open pit mine. And if you see this, all the mining concessions are in the Andean region. So the area with the most diverse area with a lot of species is endangered because of this new activity that we are not, that we didn't have before. So that's a new threat. And these are the reasons, and if you think about the other map of deforestation and the other map of agricultural land versus native ecosystems, then we are in big trouble, and frogs are in big trouble. So that's why we are so we are in a hurry to conserve the species. And this is in numbers Ecuador. So 31% of the frogs are endangered. 41 are endemic, so the danger is very high, and data deficient 25%. The problem with this data deficient is that this study of Gonzalez et al. They say that of all the data deficient species, around 47 are actually endangered, but we just don't have data for that. And previous studies, they estimated the 63%, but we try to conserve conservative and with hope, so we keep this 47 percentage. So that rises the level of endangered species for Ecuador. So we face a very big problem. Not only Ecuador, but all the region is facing these problems of frogs extinction, and we need to do something about it. These are some species that we haven't seen them. So this is Atelopus guanujo. Haven't seen them since 1988. This is Atelopus arturi. Also, haven't seen it since 1988. Gastroteca wenteri, 86. This is Atelopus petersi, 94. And Telmatorius niger, the unique species that we had of the genus, we haven't seen it since 96. Despite of all the efforts, this is not a thing of that we haven't sampled or we haven't been in the field. We haven't been in all the places that potentially they can be, or where they were abundant sometimes, and we haven't found them. So the situation is critical. So what we are doing in Centro Jambatu is working from different axes to achieve amphibian conservation. So first we are doing research. We have an in situ program, an ex situ program, and a bank of life, where we are preserving some of the tissues of the frogs, and we have a sperm bank and peptide bank that we'll explain to you later. And we have this bank of life because we know that many of the species will disappear. Despite of all the efforts, we have to be realistic, and they will disappear. So what we are doing in research, we are working in taxonomy. That's a big thing in the Centro Jambatu, because we don't know a lot of species. We still don't know how many species we have. Until now, we have described 612 species, but they can be to 800 or 1,000. So we don't know yet what we have. So we are like the rate of disappearance is faster than the rate that we have the rate of species description. This was also another species described, Velociraptor prince charlesi. I don't know if you heard about it, but this was like a desperate attempt to make people care about what's happening with frogs and care about the description of new species. Because I know how many of you know Luis Coloma. He says, okay, I put a nice picture on Facebook and I get like 1,000 likes. And then I describe a new species for science and I get like 2 likes. So what do I do to people to care? This is important. So he thought, okay, maybe if I put this name, a very attractive name, people will care. And it did. It did have an effect. So he named it Illustritus Prince Charlesi, and a lot of people was wondering, okay, what's this, Prince Charles? We don't know about princes or anything, but it seems like the world care about that. So we had a lot more views with this. And actually, Luis was invited to the castle and everything. It was a good thing. I think it's a funny story to tell, because people care when you do something like, I don't know, that usually we don't care. In situ program, so we are doing some monitoring of our Harlequin frogs in the wild. We are doing this research for Atelopus longirostris, Atelopus varius. Atelopus is a new species that is very similar to longirostris, Atelopus goinei and Atelopus nanai. We need to understand what is happening. We need to understand what is happening with those populations, what the structure of the population, why they are dying, why some of these species are resistant to some pathogens like BD. So we are doing some monitoring to understand what we have to do to save these species. And it's very interesting because these waterfalls here, if you can notice, these are the cascadas gemelas, the twin cascadas, the twin waterfalls. And this is clear water, and this is like dirty water. This is due to mining, because there was some exploration activities up here. So this waterfall got contaminated, and it has been like that since they started those activities. And what's the problem with that? Well, there are many problems with that. But while we were doing the monitoring and knowing about Atelopus longirostris, which is in Junín, we found that species. I don't know if somebody recognizes it. This is a species that blew our minds when we found it, because it's an Ectopoglossus confusus. So this is like the dinosaurs of the frogs. It's very basal. It's a Dendrobatidae, from the family, from the poisonous frogs, but it has webbing between the toes, and very developed webbing between the toes. It also has a very overdeveloped testicles. The males have overdeveloped testicles that is like rare between frogs. So it is a very, very special, and we haven't seen it since 1988. So this is very important, because this community has been fighting against the mining company for a long time, like 30 years. But recently they lost. Basically, the mining company is there. They are doing these activities, but it turns out that there are these kind of species there. There is Atelopus longirostris there. There is this species, and these are the only populations that we have found in many years. So we have to do something about it. We are also working protecting some forests. So we have these 5 reserves which we are protecting. This is a cloud forest. The picture is a cloud forest of Otoyaku. Of Otongachi. So we are protecting these forests because it is necessary for us to have some habitat and to protect in situ also. We are doing also, what we are doing is supporting some local alternatives for people, because we are talking about conservation, and that if we don't give alternatives to people, then it's very difficult to actually do conservation. So we are in this specific community, we are training people, the guides, local guides in amphibian watch, so they can offer another activity and bring more people to their community. And later on, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about this situation, about the situation of this place, for you to get an idea of what's happening with many species in Ecuador. And the work ex situ. I know not all the people understand why we are keeping frogs in situ. Why do we have to keep them in glass containers? And these all frogs here, these 15 species of Atelopus, the ones underlined are some species that we rediscovered many years after we thought they were extinct. And the problem is that species are disappearing even in protected areas. They are protected areas are not protecting them anymore, but also there are a lot of gaps in conservation in this system of protecting, in this system of conservation where you protect areas, certain areas to protect the species. There are many species that are outside these areas that are not being protected. And the context is very dark for species, for some frogs, because as the example that I gave you about Ectopoglossus confusus, the only population that we found in many years is in some waterfalls that are getting contaminated by the mining company. So what do? Like, we tie ourselves around the trees for stop the mining company to get into the community, to get into the territory. We can't do that. So for some species, taking them to keep them ex situ until we find out what to do is very important. So we need to have them keep healthy and genetically viable populations to give some hope, so we can reintroduce them in the future when we understand more what's happening, why they are disappearing at such a fast rate, and what we have to do and restore the habitat so they can get into their habitats again. So this is the largest, these are some of the species. This is the largest a live collection of Atelopus, and we are trying to reproduce them all. We have also some gastrothikas. This is Gastrotheca cornuta. We haven't seen them, like the local populations in Ecuador were also disappeared, so we found this last year, and other very small populations, so we keep them, and we have reproduced it successfully. Other species that are in our conservation program, in our ex situ program, are these. And Ectopoglossus confusus that just entered the program. So we are developing technology for managing and breeding ex situ populations. It's not easy, especially when you manage so many different species. So we are developing more technology, and we are developing also technology for of assisted reproduction. We have successfully bred all of these species without any technique more than management. Many Gastrotheca species and many species there that you see now are in the market, like Valius and Limon. But we are not able to reproduce them at the velocity that we need. We can't wait for all these species. For some, we have very few individuals, and we can't, and they can die before they reproduce, and that is a disaster for us because we lose the genetic pool which we need to have viable populations. So we are starting with this, with some research of assisted reproduction. For many years, we rejected and we said no, we can do it. We just need to improve our management and everything, but now we know, because of all the species that we have, because of the urgency of saving them, we are getting into this assisted reproduction. I will just put this video. So this is the development of Atelopus longirostris. Which we had on a plexus for a long time, Atelopus can be in a plexus for months, and even they can die without. They can die because the female won't lay the eggs. So while they were in this plexus for almost a month, we induced the female with a hormone. So she laid the eggs, and we had this successful reproduction. Now we have 250 eggs that are tadpoles that are reproducing successfully. So that gives us like more hope that we can be successful with other species that we haven't been so far. And also we started with this in vitro fertilization. So this is very, very new for us. This, just in case we are not introducing it, just for, because I know it can be like a rough picture, but it's just we take the sample, the urine by capillarity. So you just put the I don't know how to say that in English, but you put the capillar, and it will just go up by capillarity. So we started with some essays with Atelopus limo. This is the in vitro fertilization, which then you put in this. And actually this is not Atelopus limon, this is Raibo lombergi, lumber toad, the largest toad that we have. And this gives us more hope, because then it means that we can do some, we can plan better our reproduction, because otherwise we have to wait until we get this plexus and the female with the other male, and some males won't get an plexus ever. So with this we can collect some samples from different males, and we can with that achieve more genetic variability to have viable genetic populations. We are also doing some veterinary research. So the first speaker showed us a picture of this worm inside. So this is actually the surgery to take out that worm. I was fascinated when I saw it. So when Elena, the veterinarian, asked me to assist in the operation. So when it's huge. It is huge.
Oh, yeah.
And then you won't see it, but believe me, it was alive after that, and it was very healthy. It is very healthy right now. And that was Elena, the veterinarian. And no, it was very funny because we had this, I don't know how to say that, the watery thing that you put to hydrate. So we had one of them, and it was like, okay, now hydrate it, and now she's getting away, so we have to be faster, and it was very exciting. But we are also, it helped us to tell the community that their water is contaminated. That's a human parasite. And this is a wild frog. It came from the field. So we warned the population, hey, you are drinking contaminated water, so you should do something about it, because the frog is now good. But the population, the humans there, are probably not that good. We are also looking for some pathogens. So this is BD. So we are researching BD. These are wild populations. These are not like the lab population, because we have the parasites control in our lab populations. But these all are wild population that comes with this. For example, this is a Acanthocephala, and this killed this frog because it just get into the vessels and broke them. So it killed the frog. So we are looking, and we are finding these new parasites that in Ecuador hasn't been registered before. And we have this peptide DNA and sperm banks. We have, as I told you, we have there are some species that won't make it, so we are storing some DNA, and also the peptides bank. Have you heard about the medical potential that is in the skin of frogs. So we are studying it. We have found some interesting results, and we are saving it so we can study them in the future, because people just don't care about frogs. So we need to give them more reasons to care, to conserve them. So we need to tell them, okay, there is an economic potential behind the frogs, not just because they are beautiful and they need to exist, and because they are very important in the ecosystem, but because, and sometimes I hate to do that, and because you can make money with them, and that gives us another reason. So these are, I was very amazed. I wanted to show you because this was amazing for me. This is the sperm of Atelopus limon, and this is the sperm of an Atelopus, and I forgot the other one. Oh, these are both different Atelopus, and the sperm is very different for the human. I didn't know that, and it is like different species have like, this is a long tail, very long tail, and the other one has short tail. So for me it was very nice to see, and I wanted to show you. And this is how we do the sperm count. So the blue would be the ones that are dead, and the red ones would be, the pinkish would be the life. So there we can see how viable is our sample, because we are saving some sperm. Now we have very few individuals for some species, and we don't know when we are going to find more individuals. So it's very important for us to save sperm for the future. We are cryopreserving the sperm. So if the frog that we have now dies in the future, we will not lose that genetic pool, and we can then do some in vitro fertilization with other females that can arrive in the future, or that we can find in the future. So I told you we are having very interesting results with this peptides research. So we found this antimicrobial and antifungal, is that the word? Antifungal activity in this Crucioula calcarifer on the Crucioseptinas. And also we just recently found some in an Atelopus species. So we are finding these important results that we want to tell people, to tell our authorities just to care. What our ongoing and future steps? We are working in sperm cryopreservation, so we are working with more species. We are researching assisted reproduction and making protocols to more species. And also we are making some species reintroduction essays and ecological restoration, because nothing of what we do makes sense if we don't think that in the future we will reintroduce these species to the nature. It doesn't work if we just have them in the lab. So now we are starting with these reintroduction essays, because it's very difficult. The first time we did an essay, we sucked. Like really, we didn't have any frog later. So it is very difficult to do so. So we are working in monitoring, and we now have some tags to understand what's happening, which are the predators and everything. So we are doing that, and also we are working in ecological restoration, because there is lacking a lot of a habitat for species. And we are making these integral projects for conservation of all the Atelopus, because it is the most endangered genus. That involves these different components that I've talked to you. And why is the reason of that? I wanted to show you this. This is the, I told you about Atelopus longirostris. This is the long-nosed Harlequin frogs, which we are studying. So this is the landscape for this frog. These two patches over here, these two little patches, are the only patches where we have found these species, despite we've looked in all the other very small patches. So this is the reality for a lot of Atelopus and a lot of frogs. A very degraded landscape, which have very small patches of forest, and species just getting isolated in these very small patches. So all these two species are associated to this river Chalhuayacu. So we need to restore all of this. So we are now studying the population, see how the population is, and we need to connect them. And we need to restore some forest here, because otherwise the population will be lost in the future. And in this fragmented landscape, you have the mining situation. So it's very dark. The future is very dark for these species, but we need to work in all these projects that involve the community to stop this degradation of the land. We need to work with the habitat, giving some more habitat to species, and mainly we need to understand what's happening. And we need to reproduce them ex situ to eventually reintroduce them to nature. What can we expect for the frog's future? Well, we need to have hope, because otherwise we will be doing other things. But the reality is we just have this proportion of species in our conservation program, in situ, ex situ, different conservation programs. And these are the endangered species of Ecuador. So we need to do a lot more. We need to increase our study. We need to increase our infrastructure to harbor more species, and we need to have more funding for that. What can you do? Just support sustainable trade. I know that here there's people. I don't have to tell you this, because I've seen that your people committed to conservation, but not all people is committed to conservation. So they are buying frogs from the black, from the gray market. That is just giving another. It is another pressure for the frogs for its extinction. So support sustainable trade, support the companies and enterprises that are doing it in a responsible and sustainable way. These are some of WIKIRI's upcoming jewels. I wanted to end with this. We are releasing 14 extra species. Lola can give you the accurate number and all the species that we are launching, but these are some of them. You can expect some surprises for the future. Well, I just wanted to give credit for the people that makes the pictures, because I didn't do anything of that. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you have any question, you can make me the questions later, I think, because I think I was too long.